Welcome to the UCLAAnderson Drive Time Podcast. My name is Dylan Stafford. I'm an assistant dean here at UCLA. I am your host this evening. With me is Arun Mathai. Hi, Arun.
Hey, Dylan.
I am so glad you are here. This is going to be fun. Arun was nominated by his peers. This is our second year doing our summer spotlight. So what are we, how many weeks till graduation? How far away?
Four. We are 4 weeks away from graduation. I can count them on one hand. It's kind of amazing.
It is finish line in sight time.
Yeah, definitely.
And Arun's, part of this heroic class of 2021 who has done 4 of their 9 quarters in a pandemic impacted reality, something like that, or 5 if you count last summer. And we sent a survey, Darcy and Samantha, our team, we sent a survey to the class of 2021, and we asked for nominations for people whose stories were exciting, fun, noteworthy. They were inspiring to their classmates, bottom line. And I hope that this will be really valuable for you. Arun, I appreciate you accepting the nomination and take something to talk about yourself in person. So I appreciate your generosity. I know I've enjoyed, you always bring a really calm presence when you walk in the room, and I've enjoyed your leadership the last 3 years as I've gotten to watch you on council. So, in advance, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm just really honored to have been nominated by my classmates, my incredible peers. So thank you for having me.
Well, we are thrilled. And we're going to follow, those of you listening, we're going to follow our normal kind of before, during, and so what, now what, look ahead. So past, present, and future, we'll follow that format. I've got this fun lightning round of questions at the end. Arun has been with LACMA for coming up on 15 years, since 2006. He's a budget manager there. He went to USC undergrad, so he is going to have the world's richest network. He's going to have Marshall and Anderson. So he has dialed himself into the thought leadership of LA County for the rest of his life. And we're going to, learn about all of that, where he was before, what happened during, and again, the look ahead. So with no further ado, why don't we, start by kind of introducing yourself, where'd you grow up and a little bit about your family background?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in San Jose in Northern California. Quick flight from LA, thankfully. And my parents are actually from India, born and raised in India. Actually met and got married in Germany, and moved back to India. My sister was born, and then they moved to the States in the mid 70s. First to Chicago, and then eventually to the Bay Area. My dad was an engineer, and he came out to California to work at IBM.
Nice.
Yeah, and then my brother was born, and then I was a few years later. There's about a 9-year gap between my sister and me. So pretty sizable age difference, but
is she younger, your sister?
Older, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Both she and my brother have had a huge influence on my life, but in many ways, my sister in particular had a very, very big influence on me, because she's how I got into dance, because I'm also a dancer, in addition to working at the museum at LACMA. And I moved to LA to go to USC. As you mentioned, I actually always assumed I would go to UCLA for undergrad. My sister went to UCLA for undergrad. My brother went to UCLA for undergrad, and I assumed I would as well. But when I decided that I was going to get a bachelor's in business administration, there were a number of reasons why it made more sense to ultimately go to USC. First of which is that USC Marshall actually has undergraduate business degree. You're able to take classes at the Marshall School of Business. But then I also got a scholarship that made it a pretty level playing field. So I ultimately decided to go to USC for undergrad. And I loved it. I really enjoyed it. It was a great experience, great campus environment. And it lined me up for my first job after I graduated, which was at Robinson's May, which is an old department store that used to be all over Southern California, and they had a few locations in Nevada and Arizona. But I was training to be a buyer at the central buying office in the office of sheets and coordinated bedding. It was a very, very glamorous job.
Welcome. You just graduated with honors from USC, and now
Right,
welcome back
right.
to being a Starbucks barista. Yes, our 20s. We all love our
Well,
20s.
well, I mean, it was like an executive training program, right? So
Oh, well,
I
that's
was,
not nothing. Oh, good.
yeah, I was actually in their central office learning how to pick out assortments and stock and figure out, how much you're supposed to order for each location based on their throughput. And it was meant to be a really meaningful experience, but they, about a month after we started, got bought out by Macy's,
Mm.
and all of the jobs were being consolidated with the Federated Department Store offices, primarily in San Francisco and New York. And I got an offer to move with them to the SF buying office, which in some ways would have been like this beautiful full circle moment. I would have ended up back up in the Bay Area, because that's still where, that was where my family was at the time. That's still where they are. My parents are still in San Jose. And I considered it, but after I graduated from USC, while I was working at Robinson's May, I joined a dance company, a contemporary Indian dance company called Blue 13. And I really loved what the company was doing. I really enjoyed the work that the choreographer, the artistic director, was putting out. And I decided that I wasn't done with LA and I wanted to stick around a little bit longer. So I stayed at Rob May until until they finally closed down the office. And I had what I call that first year like the best introduction to the working world, because I was effectively only with the department store for about 9 months.
Wow.
And then I got severance and I had summer break again.
I get to retire. I've been in the work world
Totally.
for 9 months.
Yeah, this is great. I'm just gonna dance from now on. So no, I danced for that summer, but realized that I still wanted to pursue something else professionally. And the first job I applied for actually was a role at the museum at LACMA.
Mhm.
And that ultimately was the first offer that I got, which I accepted. And I've been there ever since now, as you mentioned, almost 15 years. So yeah.
Wow, look at that. Okay, I wish everyone had that quick of job acquisition success. That's great. First one you applied for, and you're there 15 years almost. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. I love it. And which part of India was your family from?
They are from
Or are they?
Kerala, which is on
Oh,
the
Kerala.
southwest coast of India. Yeah, yeah. And actually, I've got, so I guess I'll be peppering these throughout the discussion, but I've got some pictures that I can share of my family. Let me pull them up on the screen. So
Aw.
this is my family. So this is my mom and dad actually on their wedding day in Germany. And so I guess a little known fact to keep in mind, in the 60s and 70s, Germany was actually sponsoring a lot of young students to come to Germany from India to study nursing and engineering. And that's effectively what my mom and dad did. My mom was a nurse, my dad was an engineer.
Oh, perfect.
And so they moved there independently, and were introduced by my dad's cousin, who was a nun at the same convent as my mom's aunt. And so it was that sort of like telephone, like, oh, you have a niece there, I have a cousin who, and so that's how they were connected. And here, many years later, is the fruit of that marriage. My
Aw.
sister, my brother, and me. This was just at a family wedding a few years ago. And then this is all of the immediate family. This is a relatively recent picture. So my sister and her husband, Grady, and their 2 daughters, my nieces, Aaliyah and Soraya, my parents, my brother, me, and my brother's puppy, Penny. So
Oh, is that a
family
golden
photo.
doodle? That's a
Golden doodle, yeah.
Oh, that's a handsome.
She's really cute.
Oh my gosh.
And then I have a huge family, and this is a photo from a family reunion a few years ago. And this is my mom's side of the family, and so this is just one side of the family. It's actually not even everybody, but my mom is one of 11 siblings,
Wow.
and so yeah, huge family. But family is pretty important part of my life. So yeah.
My grandfather was the youngest of 10, and
Oh wow. All right. Yeah. So
so
you're
so
familiar with this concept.
South Texas, I have cousins that I've never met. You know, lots and lots of cousins on my mom's father's side. Is that in Kerala, that picture, or?
No, that's in Cabo.
That's in Cabo. Okay, I thought those. I went to Kerala once with the global immersion. You know, the global immersion part was
Cool.
Delhi and Mumbai. But then I don't know if you ever met Parag Lal. He's class of 04. His father lives on an ashram in Kerala, and
Cool.
he did the global immersion as an alum, and he said, "Hey, Dylan, let's go spend a week with his father." And so I got to go to Kerala, and it was beautiful. How is your family, you know, with the current situation in India? How are they doing?
Um, uh, for the most part, okay. I do have an uncle and an aunt who tested positive and were actually admitted to the hospital.
Oh,
Thankfully, they were able to get admitted,
mm-hmm.
and they received beds. My aunt is pretty much fully recovered. My uncle is still struggling a little bit, but we're hopeful that he'll pull through. So,
Wow. Okay.
but thankfully, everybody else that I know has, knock on wood, has not been affected. So hopefully it stays that way. But yeah, it's pretty scary. It's yeah.
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 Well,
Idea.
best thoughts, and yeah, we all
Thank you.
have to get to the finish line on this, whatever the finish line is going to look like. Well, beautiful. Well, when did the MBA bug, when was it planted in undergrad, or, you know, what was the rationale for, okay, because you would have been at LACMA about 12 years, right? I guess things aren't going bad if you've been there over a decade.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I'll take it a step back from that, even, you know, just going back to my parents and their pursuit of education. They were the first to pursue anything beyond even like an elementary school level education. And so, you know, they finished high school and then got a post-secondary degree. And one of the things growing up that my dad in particular was always um, sort of touting was the importance of education, and how that's like, no matter what happens to you, it's the one thing that nobody can ever take away from you.
Mm.
And it was something that I mean, both of my parents always encouraged, and you know, it was never something that was expected of us, but it was definitely yeah, encouraged, I think is the right word. So I I've sort of always had this idea, this notion that I might go back to school and get a master's and most likely an MBA, but you know, there wasn't really any major like reason for me to go for it. Or it seemed at the time I was content with what was happening for me at work. I really enjoyed what was happening with dance, and
Yeah.
yeah, I was just like really happy. You know, I wasn't feeling like I needed to make any sort of major change in terms of career or trajectory or anything like that. But yeah, you know, as I mentioned, I've been at LACMA for a long time, and one of the reasons why I've stayed there for so long is that you know, there was a potential for a career path for
Mm.
me if I
Mhm.
was willing to stick it out, which so far I have, clearly. And you know, one of the cool things about being at this institution is that there are actually a lot of lifers at the museum. So my boss and our CFO both have been at the museum for, I think, 35 years or longer.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And my boss actually went to the UCLA Graduate School of Management. So before it was called Anderson, he actually went to UCLA and got his MBA,
Nice.
and started working at LACMA pretty soon after that. And you know, it was in discussions with him in particular where the um, re-emphasis of pursuing the degree came up. And so it's this concept of eventually, if you stay here long enough, hopefully you'll be considered for an executive level position. And, almost certainly when that opportunity arises, the trustees and the other executives will have to look externally for candidates, and any candidate they consider externally will have an MBA. So
Okay.
if you pursue the degree, it'll only help further the case that you should just step into that role, because in addition to having that qualification, you'll also at that point have multiple decades of experience at the institution. And that ultimately is one of the biggest reasons why I decided to pursue the degree when I did.
So in our internal lingo, you were an enhancer. You weren't
Exactly.
you weren't trying to go to Google or Boeing or Qualcomm or whatever.
No.
Yeah. Start your own. You're not the entrepreneur in the wings. You got a good gig, and you know how to position myself.
Yeah.
In an environment where people love being there. Sounds like.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I'm really cognizant of, is that I found myself at a nonprofit organization with a career, and even more specifically at a nonprofit arts arts organization in an administration role, with the potential for a career path carved out for me. And that's incredibly rare.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will remark about the fact that I've been at one place for so long, because if you talk to any of my peers that I've graduated with from undergrad, it's like 3, 4, maybe 5 years max at any one place before they jump to the next opportunity. And for me, I just I really enjoy working here, and I see the potential at this institution. Also, I love what the institution does. Just going back to the fact that I'm a dancer and I've been dancing my whole life. I'm still performing. Art is incredibly important to me, and the ability to, in some ways, combine all of my passions into my profession is really incredible. So yeah, I feel really lucky to be able to do that.
Well, yeah, it's like I'm going to come down to LA for 4 years, just, and then I get the little, I get the first job, and no offense to anybody who works for Starbucks earlier. My God, that's probably the hardest job in the world, being a barista. But, you could have gone back to San Jose. Your family's up there. There was the possibility for a San Francisco gig, but there was something, LA's, if you can get a footing here, you got to hustle, but if you can find a home, it is, it's one of the top 10 cities on the planet, right? It's a wonderful destination. So you have your dance, you've got you've got LACMA, you got a day job, and you've got your passions all in one package. And you've got 2 mentors, God bless them. Thank you both. One's an alum, and they're saying, okay, wow, these roles will come open. You'll be competing with external talent. The external talent will be bringing in probably MBAs. So great. So you were looking for advice, receiving advice, and willing to step forward into FEMBA. Oh boy, here we go. Yeah. Okay. I love it.
Yeah.
When do we get to see the cool dance pictures?
Oh yeah. All right. So, well,
I mean, it's your podcast, your flow, but I'm like, the pictures are so gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, so let me go ahead and share my screen again. We'll take it back a little bit, but back to a picture. So again, I went to USC. I mentioned I went to Marshall, and so I have to acknowledge that, right? That was the foundation for what eventually became my career. So here's a picture on the left of me and 2 of my best friends at graduation, and on the right is a picture of one of the Indian folk dance teams that I was a captain of for many years at USC. And so, dance has sort of been a constant through my life. And I joke that in undergrad, I actually spent more time dancing than I did studying, which is not entirely true, but maybe not too far from the truth. I did spend a lot of time dancing in undergrad, and clearly I love it. And so, what you see on the right side of the screen, this photo is the dance team is of a dance style called Bhangra, which is a folk dance style from the region of Punjab, which is North India / southern Pakistan. It's like really vibrant, really fun, really energetic. It's a like really celebratory dance style, and it's just a lot of fun. So I really enjoyed it.
How much are those costumes? Those are elaborate.
Yeah, well, when you get them made in India, they're significantly cheaper, thankfully. So that's what we were able to secure, thankfully, for that.
Okay, those are
Um,
gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, and like clearly I was committed to the USC, right? If you couldn't tell from the cardinal and gold colors, even of the dance costume. So yeah.
Very great.
And then just to show some more dance. So this is all again thinking about dance before I started before I started pursuing the degree. On the left, this is a picture of my like performance brochure from what in some ways is considered like a high school graduation equivalent performance. It's a solo performance where you're dancing for 2+ hours, again solo.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so this dance style, the style that I started training in that I still perform, is called Bharatanatyam. It's one of the classical styles of Indian dance, whose origins are from South India. And I almost exclusively pursued that before I started school at USC, although I dabbled a little bit in like Bollywood dancing and Bhangra before I came to USC. When I came to USC, I started doing different folk dance styles of Indian dance, but then I also started experimenting with jazz and tap and hip hop. And so after I graduated, when I started working at Robinson's May, I found this contemporary Indian dance company that I mentioned earlier called Blue 13. And it was like the perfect like blend of everything that I had done. You know, the artistic director, her name is Achinta McDaniel. She was primarily trained in modern ballet, jazz, tap, hip hop, but then went to India and studied Kathak and came back and sort of created her own movement language that I think pretty beautifully melded all of these elements together. And so this picture in the center at the bottom is actually from a performance we did at the Ford Amphitheater a few years ago. It was our adaptation of Romeo and Juliet / West Side Story. So a little bit less traditional than the other 3 photos that you see in terms of garb and move. But the central photo up top is actually from a solo performance that I did in India in 2015, I believe. And then this photo on the right, again, actually organized through Blue 13, through the Contemporary Indian Dance Company, also at the Ford Amphitheater. So same stage, same venue as you see in the central photo, but doing the classical Indian dance style, Bharatanatyam. So.
No, okay. So I'm so curious about your class, right? And I'm going to ask you about your class a little later, but what are the odds? So last week I spoke with Maxine Hupy, one of the 6, yeah. Right? She was a full-on dance major in undergrad and then danced for a decade pre-MBA. So, you know, typically how many people in an average top tier MBA course are, you know, like hardcore dance, you know, professional trained dancers? It's probably statistically small. And of the 6 nominees, you know, 2 of the 6, and then I talked with Ben Rovner, who was an actor for a decade.
Totally.
So
yeah.
I'm like, is the class of 2021 the most avant-garde MBA class Anderson ever graduated? I don't know.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, I guess I would say it's perhaps not super surprising that the performers were the people that were chosen to speak, because
Okay,
it sort of comes naturally, right? Like it's a little bit easier for us to present. So, but Ben and Maxine are incredibly talented in their own right, but also just wonderful people. So.
Yeah, you guys have so many wonderful leaders. So what was it like to dance Romeo and Juliet? Was it all interpretive, or were there actually words?
No, so it was pretty much interpretive, pretty much all interpretive, I should say. So, you know, one of the unique things about the classical dance style Bharatanatyam that I trained in is that you actually will, though you're not speaking or singing, you're accompanied by music with lyrics with very specific meaning, and your hand gestures mean very specific things. And so often, it varies from piece to piece, but often you're literally telling the story with your hand gestures and your facial expressions and, whatever the case may be, right? So one of the other many things I do is I also am a part-time lecturer at the Kaufman School of Dance at USC, and I periodically come in and teach Bharatanatyam to some of the students. And so this is one of the sort of like go-to examples that I'll talk about with hand, when I'm describing hand gestures. So these are two hand gestures that you might hold in your hand, and when you hold them like this is showing the Hindu god equivalent of Cupid, right? So Cupid is walking around and he sees somebody that he decides he wants to shoot with his bow and arrow. So he pulls back his bow and he releases his flower arrow. And then if you're Cupid's victim holding this mudra, here's the arrow that comes and hits your heart. And then you start having these like heart flutters. And so like, anyway, so you might like that. And that's like literally something that shows up in this dance style, right? So you've got that element to Indian dance, but what Achinta did, what we did with Blue 13, more often than not, is you're not literally telling the story, you're telling it in a more interpretive manner. So using the lighting and the mood that's evoked by the score and then the movement itself to tell the story. And so, I mean, I can put this particular image back up on screen. Photo was taken from like a fight scene. And
Okay.
you can sort of tell it's like really red, and we're both pretty aggressive, and we're flying in the air, and yeah. So you don't need to use spoken word to get that across. This is conflict.
What a cool art form.
Yeah. 7, when I started training, the first time I was on stage, I think I was 5. We had,
5-year-olds don't need training. You're 5. Hello, world. Look at me. I'm 5.
I mean, I would say though, I was very much like I stepped on, like I waddled on stage. We like stood in the background for a few minutes and then waddled back off. And I use, maybe waddled isn't the right term. Maybe like crept would be the appropriate term. I was a mouse in Cinderella. And so, you don't really require a whole lot of training to just like walk on stage and look cute in the background and then walk back off. But yeah, I started formally training when I was 7.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh,
yeah, I love it. I mean, I just haven't stopped, and again, knock on wood, we're knocking on wood a lot. Hopefully I will just continue dancing forever. And one of the things that I love about Bharatanatyam is that there are practitioners in their 70s and 80s who still tour and perform. So hopefully that'll be me in a number of decades from now. So.
Oh, I love it. I'll just throw this in really quick. I said it with last week in one of the recordings, but one of the deans in my MBA at Chicago talked about the merit of pursuing excellence, whether it's in your career or in your personal life. He really recommended everyone should pursue excellence in something. Doesn't matter if you ever achieve it, by no means, but you want to. The gift of discipline is that you really, there's only one way to appreciate high, extreme high productivity, which is to have challenged yourself to pursue it. And he tied it back to a business degree, that when you become CEO someday, you won't be able to be expert. There'll be way too, the requirement set will be so broad that you will have to identify excellence in those around you and know when to delegate and know when to ask for help and know when to let that person shine at that, whatever that is that they're excellent at. And it was one of those brown bag lunch lessons that always stuck with me. And what I love about being an admission director is, we have the easy things. We have GPAs and GMATs. We have some easy objective standards, but the fun part is envisioning what's this person going to be like on a study group. So my explicit biases. I love Division I athletes. I love performers. I love student body presidents, Eagle Scouts, our Mormon friends who've been on mission. to other countries, right? I love study abroad experience because I always think, you know, those learning by living and the pursuit of excellence in something that all walks into the study group with you, right? That Arun, because didn't we meet after Super Saturday? Wasn't that when we first met?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, after the admission interview, we're standing out in the courtyard, the Marian Anderson courtyard with the big green tree that we all barely remember, but way back pre-COVID. But, you know, you had a bearing about you even then. I was like, who's this guy? You know, that poise that maybe, you know, a professional relating to your body as a professional dancer, that my body is an actual communicative element. Like, it's not just good posture, but like you had a presence about you and it was cool. And, you know, like that's what's, you know, because my job is just to notice, you know, right. And try to have the end result. Like when you look left and right in Corn Hall at the start of orientation, like, well, this is neat. I wonder what her story is. And I wonder what he's all about. So yeah, I just,
thank you.
Yeah, and it's fun full circle here. You know, now your peers said, "Oh, world, learn about him." So, okay, it's just fun. And yeah, okay. So how do we transition into Anderson? What anything I've forgotten to ask about your background before we?
No, I mean, I think we're probably at a good point to start talking about that. So, you know, I had these conversations with my boss and with the CFO about pursuing the degree, and I finally decided that it was time to prepare. So I took a prep course for the GMAT, and it was definitely a stressful run up to the actual test because I think I was boarding a flight to India a day or two after I took the test. And I find that tends to be how I operate, that there are a lot of things that all happen all at the same time. This is, again, a theme in my life and at Anderson. But took the GMAT, got the score, was incredibly pleasantly surprised, and then hopped out, you know, went home, packed my bags, and went to India. And while I was there, started working on the actual application essays.
Nice.
And then, you know, eventually came to campus and met you at Super Saturday, and met a few other people who actually are still close friends of mine. One of my closest friends from the program, his name is Angelo Lopiccolo, and I met him on Super Saturday.
Wow.
And he and I have actually traveled together just for fun since, you know, we started the program. And there was another like open house event that happened, I think maybe a month later, but before admissions announcements were made. And these were all students who, for the most part, hadn't even gone through Super Saturday, but were still exploring Anderson. And that's where I met Howard Williams, who's another one of my closest friends from the program, and ended up joining Anderson. And you know, so I was starting to meet all of these really great people, and this is even before starting the program. And I also, you know, I did apply to Marshall because Marshall and Anderson are, you know, the two highest ranked part-time programs in LA. You know, thankfully I got into both USC and UCLA, and I was again faced with this decision similar to the one that I was facing in undergrad. But again, this was a relatively easy decision to make ultimately, mostly because of what you mentioned at the top. I already have access to USC and to Marshall. Anderson now will give me this entire new network. And you know, all of the people that I've met, including faculty administration like you, were just so incredibly welcoming and warm. The students that I'd met, even just the prospective students I met, I thought were pretty great. And UCLA also is just a really, really great school. So, you know, ultimately it was not a difficult decision to make. So I enrolled and then I started a few months later.
Oh, that's great. Well, yeah, I mean, and you know, Harvard has MIT and Berkeley has Stanford, USC and UCLA, right? I'm from Texas A&M, right? We have the University of Texas. You know, rivals are great. it's part of what makes American education so fun is these rivalries, right? And now, and your family's happy now because now
Exactly. I've come home, seemingly right now. All three kids will have a degree from UCLA.
wow. Yeah, and
Yeah.
your parents love education and they set that as a family norm, and look at you guys all listen, right? That's cool. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. One comment I will make, and I know that I mean there are a number of people who are like this, but some people like to call people who went to both the USC and UCLA Brojans, but I'm definitely not a bro. So the term I've coined is Truin. I'm a Truin. I'm a Trojan Bruin. I'm a Truin. So
Oh, that's
and there are a number of us, even in my class, like another close friend of mine, Jessica Truong, went to USC Marshall for undergrad and is a classmate and close friend of mine now in the program.
well, yeah. I think typically USC is, I mean, UCLA undergrad is the most represented, and then USC, it's USC or Berkeley. It kind of toggles for the second and third position in terms of most present undergrad degree or undergrad institution, excuse me, in a typical entering class. So yeah, it's funny because people, there's so many stereotypes that we always have to disabuse. Oh, you can't go to UCLA again. No, that's not true for MBA because you leave for a while. You go off to Robinson's May and you go have you go have a life and then you come back. So that whole thing of you can't go to graduate school where you went to undergrad, that doesn't apply to MBAs because we have the practicum. Go live your life for 2, 4, 5, 10 years, then come back and bring all those real lessons into graduate school. So we're happy to have the Bruins. I got to say all the right words. Now that you've got Truin and Brojan in my brain, I'll stumble over my words. We're happy to have Bruins come home. We're happy to welcome Trojans from across town, right? And Cal Bears come on down and everybody else because you bring all of that with you. That's awesome. Okay, so harmony in the Mathai household, you're admitted.
Right.
All right. You kind of you focused on GMAT because that'd been like a decade, right? Long time since I did a standardized test.
Yep.
You gave yourself the motivation of I must do this before I get on a plane.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes to motivate ourselves. Okay, you got your score. You were applying from India, so you're writing your essays over there while you're okay. You go to some welcome events before, and then you get the news, and then here you are. And so how did, for the class that's following your footsteps, what were some things that were going through your mind that summer, getting ready to go back to grad school? Like how were you getting yourself mentally set to go back? What were thoughts that summer for you?
One of the thoughts, frankly, was enjoy as much as possible before school starts, because I went in with the assumption that I would have no life for 3 years, which thankfully was proven wrong. But still, if you can, I would recommend trying to do some things like travel, or just making sure that you have a fair amount of downtime before you start the program, because you will have less of that when you do start. So I went to Spain for 2 weeks before I started the program, which is pretty nice. So,
oh, very good. Which part of Spain?
I was in Madrid almost the entire time. So that was great. Beautiful city, incredible food, so much history. Museums are wonderful. Like, yes.
Yeah, I could just live in El Prado. It's and you get
incredible, absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Well, and oh my God, what's it like to go to El Prado when you work at LACMA? I mean, you're walking in there.
Overwhelming. I mean, so one of the things I also have to mention, or usually when one of the things I have to mention when I'm talking to people about the fact that I work at LACMA is, they get really excited because they think somehow I'm involved in the curatorial element, and I have to temper their excitement by saying, no, I work in the finance office at the museum. It's very, very different. I have no say in terms of what art's going to go on view or what objects are going to be displayed. I just work to make sure that we have the money to operate. So
okay, good.
But having been at the museum for as long as I have picked up an appreciation for visual art. And you go to Prado, it's like so many masterpieces in one museum, and you like it, you could be there for so long. I mean, I did go back on 2 separate days to check it out because it's just it's too much to take in. And you know, they also have um there's I think it's at, I can't recall if it's at the Reina Sofia or if it's at a different museum, but there's the Picasso piece that I'm
Oh,
totally
Guernica.
Guernica. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's at Reina Sofia. And yeah, so I mean, and you can stare at that for a day. It's so
Hours. I
huge.
actually like I went to, the first time I went to the Reina Sofia, I went and I walked around, but then I went back a second time explicitly just to see that one piece. Because there's so much symbolism and beauty and like sadness,
Mhm.
and like it's an overwhelming piece to see, and I would say experience in person, especially if you understand what was going on in the world and specifically in Spain when Picasso crafted this piece, right? The Spanish Civil War and Franco and all of that. Like it's an incredible piece to see. Yeah.
Mm. So advice for any MBA student summer before, right? It's you're about to jump in the deep end. You're going to take the big breath and jump in the pool. So, you know, maybe so, you know, enjoy, you know, gift yourself, you know, a
Yeah.
little exhale. I mean, that's a world-class destination, right? And a memory you'll never not have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when it's time to aim at school, you're aimed at school.
Yeah. And you know, to be clear, it doesn't mean that you have to take some amazing trip somewhere in the world that will give you memory. Just making sure you give yourself the space and the time to
Mm.
breathe.
Mm-hmm.
However that manifests, right? Even if it just means reading a book for pleasure, because you may not be able to do that once you start the program. But just giving yourself that time and space to relax
Mm.
is really important. I highly recommend it.
And you were in section 4, so Tuesday, Thursday.
Tuesday, Thursday, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, what was, you know, like, what about, you know, what was, you know, okay, so now you've been getting ready all summer and now you're here, you know, how did you start to balance your time? How were you making the adjustments? You know, you've been out of school for a decade, so, and you've got a full-time career now.
Yeah. One thing that I was really good about first quarter was scheduling time to study. And so, you know, I would set aside specific hours on specific days of the week to do all the reading that you need to do for organizational behavior, or reading the cases, or writing the papers, or similarly working on the problem sets for stats. And that definitely helped with the transition back into school, because as you mentioned, it had been a decade plus between undergrad and grad school, and I was certainly nervous about it because I just hadn't been in an environment like that
Mm-hmm.
for so long. So that's another piece of advice I would give to anybody that's coming into the program is, to the extent that you can, try to schedule your time,
Mm.
because it makes a huge difference.
And how about just the, you know, so we have the 3 schedule choices, right? So there's the all day Saturday choice or the hybrid. What was, you know, what was the calculus that had Tuesday, Thursday be the schedule
Yeah.
for you?
So for me, hybrid was well. Not to say that it wasn't an option, but in theory, you know, it was posed that hybrid was primarily for students who were coming in from out of town. I'm very local. I'm in West Hollywood, so it's a 15-minute drive from my apartment to campus. And so I just sort of by default ruled that out.
Okay.
And then it came to Tuesday, Thursday, or all day Saturday. And because I was still dancing and performances often required being available on the weekends and
Mm.
sometimes involved travel, that in many ways ruled out Saturdays. And thankfully, LACMA is also not too far from UCLA's campus. And so Tuesday, Thursday was not unreasonable. It just meant they were very, very long days.
So you continued to dance during school?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
thankfully. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
I'm impressed.
happy to show some photos of that too, if you'd like to see.
Oh,
It's
please.
well, what I've got up on the screen. This is a photo on the left from a performance that I did in San Francisco, and this is right after winter quarter of my first year. And so I mentioned that theme of things building up to a head and then something's happening, right? And so winter quarter for all of the incoming students, just so you're aware, is also one of the hardest quarters that you'll have because you're taking accounting and econ. It's two quant heavy classes. You've got deliverables for one, if not both classes every week while you're there. It's definitely something to be aware of when you're coming into this program. And this performance was scheduled for 2 days after my final, after
Oh
one
my
of my
God.
finals. So it's again another one of those things where I took the final, went home, packed, flew up to the Bay Area the next day, teched on Friday, and then performed on Saturday. But again, just like really grateful to have had the opportunity to perform. This was just it was an hour-long performance at a black box theater in San Francisco. And then the middle performance, the middle image actually is from a performance with so the man that I'm dancing with, my partner, his name is Sujit, and he is a choreographer and dancer based in Vancouver. And
Mm.
this is a project that he'd been conceiving of, that he'd conceived of and had, sort of like iterating in his head for many years, but he wanted an openly gay dancer who was comfortable, you know, being out and performing. Um, and we knew each other from the Bharatanatyam dance scene, and so he reached out to me, and I ended up working with him on this project of his called Off Center. And
Mm.
so that's an image from one of our presentations of that piece that happened in, I think it was January of my second year. So not quite with finals, but that again was during second year. And one of the things I also really loved about this now is that this was, for the first time, I was truly incorporating myself as a gay man in my in the dance form that I grew up training in
Mm.
Bharatanatyam. So I really, really appreciated that opportunity. And he actually ended up connecting me. The beauty of networking, right? That's what you learn at UCLA and business school
Yeah.
in general. But he ended up connecting me with the choreographer that's based in Toronto, and Sujit and I were working with that choreographer on another queer Bharatanatyam performance that
Mm.
was set to have premiered in March of 2020. So here again, we are back to this theme of things that happen right up at like building up to the end. So like finals happened again, winter quarter 2020, and I flew to Vancouver, and I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks for a week of rehearsals and then a week of residency and performance, and then the world shut down. And so unfortunately, we were not able to present that piece, but I am really grateful for the fact that I've been able to incorporate this element of who I am into the art that I'm participating in. That image, the central image, is really important to me. And then the image on the right is from a virtual festival that I participated in. It's for the festival is called Erasing Borders, and typically it takes place in New York, but they, along with everybody else, pivoted and moved the festival online. And they asked the performers to present a piece that somehow spoke to what was going on in the world. And so this was late summer last year. And so, obviously COVID was huge all over the world, but particularly in the US, we have this reckoning
Mm-hmm.
of racial injustice, and I really wanted to draw attention to the fact that, it's something that's not really talked about, but South Asians are like very, I shouldn't say are, can be quite racist, especially if you think about people from older generations.
Mm,
And I, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to draw attention to the issue.
mm,
And one of the things that I spoke about was that, this performance that thankfully aired about a month or two before the elections happened. And, not to get overly political, but one of the things that I sort of spoke to indirectly with this piece was that, um, as individuals, we have the ability to fight for change. And that fight can be as simple as voting for the candidate that you think will make sure that change happens. And so that was indirectly what I was getting at with this piece. But I'm really happy that I was able to also present and speak to this very important issue that was going on, and is still going on, right? Like by no means has this been reconciled,
yeah.
um, but but yeah, dance. I've,
Well,
I've
and
still
well,
managed
dance, and I mean, so much. I mean, yeah, pictures worth 1,000 words, and this is 3,000 at least. And also, because people have concerns. Like people walk into Anderson with a full-grown adult life, and sometimes people call the fully employed the part-time MBA, but there's nothing part-time about it. It's a moonlighting MBA, and you're gonna have your pre-existing professional and personal commitments of what you do for a living and your family and friends who still love you and still want to be with you. And in your case, you've got an avocation of dance. Like, so it's in addition to everything else, self-expression as a gay man in your chosen passion of dance, and then having the ability to make a statement about the societal moment. You were also doing all that while you were going to school. So, I don't ever purport to suggest that that might be easy. I don't want to misguide people. Like, I mean, you said first quarter, you scheduled your study time, but how did you allocate, how did you have enough hours in the day? Maybe somebody listening is going, what does this guy never sleep? Or, how
um,
did you do all that?
that does happen. There certainly will be days where you just don't sleep as much as you'd like. But I mean, one of the things that you are sort of forced to practice is um, prioritizing what what needs to get done, what really matters, what can wait. And I would say that that's one thing that I think I've made a fair amount of progress on, is figuring out what actually do I need to do, of all of the things that I'm posed with. What is it that can wait? Um, are there things that I just don't have to do? And then just making that priority and following through with whatever decision you make. So that's something that you'll have to come to terms with, right? Like I grew up in a household where, as I mentioned, education was incredibly important, and that meant that you had to get really, really, really good grades. And eventually you just come to terms with the fact that, the grade itself maybe doesn't matter as much as the experience and what you learn, right? And so obviously you still want to focus on the academic element of it to get the most out of it, because ultimately this is a master's degree and you're trying to gain knowledge. Um, but it's also not the worst thing in the world if you get a B.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well, when did, because so you were a big, you're on the executive board with FEMBA Council. When can we talk about FEMBA Council? Because I want to make sure that gets a spotlight.
Yeah, let's talk about it now. So I I came into the experience with one really strong memory from undergrad, which is I was an RA senior year of college, and
Mm,
I remember after that just wishing that I'd actually gotten more involved with campus earlier on in my time at USC,
okay.
because you just learn so much more about all of the resources that are available to you when you are involved in campus life. And so with that memory, you know, how as long as it was between undergrad and the start of grad school, I still had that memory. And, you know, with that in mind, I decided that I did really want to try to get actively involved on campus at Anderson, and FEMBA Council was the way that that manifested. So I ran for and was elected to be the social chair for Section 4 my first year. And as part of that, helped organize a few events. And I, you know, perhaps not surprising at this point, I have some images that I could share.
Let's see some social images. Yes.
Yeah. And so these are pictures from first and second year, but top left, this is an event that I organized at LACMA, actually. Conveniently enough, one of my section mates is a cellist and was performing at LACMA. This is Pierre with his cello, and he performed at the museum in fall quarter of our first year. And so I organized an event where we went to the museum, had a docent give us a tour of an installation that had opened up about a month prior, went to watch Pierre perform, and then stuck around afterwards for appetizers and drinks. So that was a really cool experience, and just like another great way to interact with classmates outside of class.
Okay, hang on, don't go anywhere yet. See, I get all verklempt, right? Like that's a really cool thing.
Yeah,
okay, so we got two dancers, and now you're talking about the cellist. Like,
yeah,
I'm going to go back to my team and say we have the most diverse student body anywhere. Match this, just match it. That is like, and it's a function of it's UCLA is a magnet for talent, but so is Los Angeles.
Yeah,
and wow,
yeah,
that's so cool. Like Pierre was
really cool.
Yeah. So he's still pursuing his cello. You're still pursuing your dance. You're now weaving in this killer MBA circle of friends. You're sourcing each other, supporting each other. You're sharing resources of access to a docent plus, you know, a world-class setting. And he's got like more people cheering for him. Like moments like that, that's the magic of, you know, people have to trust their graduate choice. Like, I trust you, UCLA, you know, be worth my time, effort, and you know, and all the faculty from the, you know, the most famous to the brand new, you know, they're all humble enough to say half of it is us, but half of it is you guys talking to each other. And yeah. I want to see all four of the other pictures because I know they're great, or five, all four other pictures. But I mean, it's just to underline, like, what a beautiful moment in living. And that was your first quarter?
That was first quarter, yeah.
That's just awesome. Okay, please keep going. I got verklempt. I just can't skip over that. That's beautiful.
I mean, I do want to emphasize that, right? Just like how significant it was that even just in the first quarter, as you mentioned, like we're able to bring all of these elements of our disparate lives together into this one moment, right? So to me, that's a really important photo. I really do love it. And top right, this is a photo from the FEMBA Games first year. So this is section 4 in our royal blue t-shirts. We did not win, but we had a lot of fun, and that's all that matters. So, and we'll just keep going clockwise. Lower right, this is a photo with 3 of my best friends from the program. This is when we were in Vegas. So FEMBA Council will organize a trip, typically to Vegas, although the location may change year to year. And so these are my friends Howard, Naomi, and Angelo, and I just posing in this hilariously oversized couch. And then the next photo, center bottom, this was actually at the LA Regional Food Bank. So again, as the social chair for my section, I organized this outing where we all went to volunteer at the food bank in South LA, and then went to get food at a market nearby. So just like another really good opportunity for all of us to hang out in a non-traditional setting, and also, you know, accomplishing one of the things that I think is really important, which is this concept of giving back, right? and making sure that we all understand how lucky we are to be in the program that we are in, and how important it is that we, as the future leaders of industry, whatever that industry is, keep community in mind. And so that was sort of what I was going for with that particular event. And then
And just
finally,
before we get to the wedding, because we got to give spotlight on that. But we have our first year student Will Tran, who's at the LA Regional Food Bank, and we did a interview with him last Thanksgiving just about the outsized role that they were playing in food security, food safety in this county 6 months into COVID.
Yeah.
I just, wow, this is such a, you're covering so much ground. Okay. All right. And coming around the corner, we got a wedding. We got a FEMBA wedding.
We got a FEMBA wedding, right? This is Henry and Sahara. They're both classmates of mine. They're third years, and they got married in October of 2019. And so this is a photo of a bunch of Anderson classmates at their wedding. And it just, to me, is another one of the social highlights from my experience at Anderson thus far, is that I got to celebrate this milestone in their lives with a number of other classmates that I love, that I enjoy spending time with, and just it was a big Indian wedding, so it's also just lots of fun.
And what city was it held in?
Dallas.
Yeah. So there's Luke, there's James,
right?
There's you. And you guys are not, you're not in Orange County. No.
No.
So
like, truly traveling from all over the country to get together for this wedding in Texas. So
yeah, and stupid on me, but I got invited and I couldn't figure out all the details to get to go. And Sahara sent the picture afterwards, and I was like, oh my God, she's so gorgeous.
It was so fun. It was so fun.
Yeah. Oh, what a party. Yeah. So like, how do you, because like, this is the stuff, I say this stuff, or we talk about building lifetime friendships, right? And it can sound like marketing. Yeah, sure. Like, people have so many stereotypes about what business school is like. But look at this montage. This is Arun's business school in photos, right? Like, how do you, and of course, these are highlight photos, right? So there's this is not a photo of you sitting in front of Excel.
Right. Certainly not those late hours at the library, right, at Rosenfeld. It's the fun highlights, as you mentioned.
So. But how do you, if you were sharing this with future MBA students, like, how would you apportion, like, is this the top 10%, or like, how would you put, because it just looks like, well, that doesn't even look like business school. That just looks awesome, right? And yet you're going to UCLA, you're going to Anderson, you're getting, a top tier MBA while all of that is happening. Like, how would you, if somebody says, well, I want my MBA to kind of look like yours, how are you comporting yourself? Like, I don't know, you were a student leader. You said, I'm going to run for FEMBA Council. You were organized, like, you organized the regional bank with a commitment, not just to do something social, but to do something social with future leaders of management, such that they are aware of, look what organizations can do when they cross-reference, right? Like, if you're at Boeing and you get behind the LA Regional Food Bank, look what you can make even better.
Right.
All right. I'm sorry. There's no question. That's the world's longest non-question, but
no, well, I think it's an important thing to keep in mind. And I would say this is probably another piece of advice that I'd give to the incoming classes: go to happy hour.
Go to happy hour. That's what,
just go to happy hour. Right? And like,
that's what Maxine said last week. She said, go to happy hour.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that they regretted going to happy hour. And it's one of the easiest ways to build a meaningful personal relationship with your classmates, because when you're in the classroom and you're focused, and you don't have a whole lot of downtime. So there is some downtime built into class, in the middle of class or perhaps afterwards, but otherwise the only other way you get to know your classmates is by going to happy hour and going to events, right? So So just really, as best as you can, as much as your schedule will allow, commit to the program and all of the opportunities that it provides, and it that it comes with a little bit of ease for me because I'm not partnered and I don't have kids, and so I don't have those same family obligations that, for example, parents who are in the program have, right? But you can still try to find some time, I would hope. And so like Stephen Johnson, who's another classmate of mine, who's a parent and has a bunch of little kids, would also
He's got 4.
right.
And he
Like
wrote a book. And he wrote a book.
He had like 1-year-old twins, I think, in the first year of the program, right? So it's like, as a dad of 4, he would still come to happy hour periodically, and I love that he was able to find the time and the energy to still come to happy hour after being in class on a Thursday night. But yeah, go to happy hour and just meet your peers. That's the first step in arriving at I guess a photo montage like this, where you end up being able to experience very memorable events with your friends.
So you want to get the Ferrari education, and that happens in class, but you also want the Ferrari network.
Yeah.
And that gets built one happy hour at a time. And then you get to know, oh, Pierre, you play cello. Oh, you're going to perform at LACMA. I work at LACMA. What a small world. And yeah, okay. And is it seriously as simple as that? Just if you get on the court and shake hands and entrust the process? Or are you Arun, like just the super special cool guy? Does this happen for everybody? Or did it, are you just like, can it happen for everybody? Is I guess what I'm asking.
I think so. I believe so. I certainly hope so. I think that's been my experience with my classmates. I think the main thing is just don't be just be a nice person.
And what does that turn into? Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, I mean, when you're an approachable person, it's it just lends itself to ease of conversation with people around you, and yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that we've all hopefully learned over the past year is to have empathy for the fact that people are going through many different things. And certainly during the pandemic, what one person was going through is very different from what another person was going through. But I think we need to understand that that's life in general, not even when we're not in a pandemic. So don't have any sort of judgments or preconceived notions about what one person is going through. Just have empathy.
Yeah. And you're earning a terminal degree in the discipline of management. And management is achieving goals and objectives with and benefiting from the time, talent, and treasure of people around me. Whatever particular recipe is going to be required for an ever-changing, globally disrupted, technologically upheaval, pandemic experiencing human moment. I'm going to take all that chaos and I'm going to plot a path forward. And it's a degree in management. There's, the faculty don't give you an answer. Run this regression on every team you're ever a part of and everything will work out. There's science. You're getting the best scientific perspective from PhD knowledge generating tier 1 research faculty at the #1 research university in the world, the last 4 years running. Yay, UCLA. But then you still have to go put that on the court of your life. And so Arun is saying, be a nice person. Take some empathy into your living. Yeah. Love it.
I realized that I never actually got to a whole lot more about council. So, I mean, most of what I spoke about was first year, but I if you'll indulge me again.
Oh, we don't know.
More photos. I ran for and was elected to be the executive vice president for FEMBA Council in my second year. And so these are photos of our e-board. And, my peers on e-board are also amongst my closest friends from the program. We spent a lot of time together. And I loved them. I love working with them. And I also just really love these photos that we took, particularly the one on the left, where we're just, sitting on the stairs in Anderson. And to me, in a lot of ways, I feel like that photo encapsulates Anderson really well, because, we're all dressed very professionally. Clearly, we know how to do what we're doing, but we're having fun, as you can tell in the photo. I love it.
And
Yeah.
you got some styling socks. Look at the wrong. That's just busting out with the killer socks.
Totally. Yeah.
No,
And
I love that. And look, Luke, there's Luke, who was just in the
yeah,
wedding picture, and there's Darcy, who's our
yeah.
producer for Drive Time, and there's Ben that we talked with last week, and there's last year's student body president. I love the chemistry of your 2021 leadership cadre and the 2020 leadership cadre. You guys really had this kind of dual, you had this overlapping. I mean, maybe it was the, unique context of COVID. I don't know. They were having to graduate, the first class to graduate in COVID. But that's a pre-COVID picture. You guys were already vamping.
Yeah.
You already had style and pizzazz and some kind of a special esprit de corps even before the pandemic.
Yeah. And I think it's just, one of the things that I really took away from this experience is that, there is a lot of serious stuff that we have to do, but you can have fun while you're doing all of it, right? So like the Halloween photo in the bottom, for example, is just like another great capture of what it was like for me being on eBoard. It's a lot of fun.
It's great.
Yeah.
And I selfishly, if you're listening to this and you're a future FEMBA, I always selfishly want, those of you who know you want to challenge yourself and be a servant leader and really develop your leadership, definitely run for FEMBA Council, definitely consider FEMBAssador. Those two, I selfishly want your time and talent to go into, because those two build the future of FEMBA, right? You actually impact all 900 students plus the next generation. And not everybody gets a seat, so don't despair. We have 50 plus professional, personal, identity, and social clubs and organizations in the Anderson Student Association. So, I really got my heart set on FEMBA Council. Oh my gosh, it was super competitive in my section, and this great woman got the spot. I didn't get it. Do not despair, right? Anderson is waiting for your leadership. We're spotlighting Arun. Arun's trajectory was through FEMBA Council by and large, also C for C, but there's 50 plus, and almost every, I think, has a built-in position for a FEMBA officer, plus at large, plus just the regular officers, and you can run for those and be elected. And COVID has made it a lot easier to be in clubs. So
yeah, and just sort of to build off of that, one of the other things that I came to really appreciate from my experience with eBoard is going back to the point that I guess that started this whole conversation, was how more in touch I became with the resources available at Anderson and the relationships I formed with the administrative staff, and still are, ones that I'm really grateful for. So yes, it is important to study. Yes, it's important to build your relationships with your peers, but get to know the faculty and the administrative staff, because they will help you whenever there's any sort of trouble or issue or difficulty you're facing. Yeah.
And it's not a cliche. I mean, I don't know, whatever you could compare it to, student leadership in high school or student leadership, like you said, in undergrad, being an RA there at the end and realizing, oh my gosh, look at all this extracurricular, but I didn't do that year 1, 2, and 3 in undergrad. But we could not have gotten through COVID without the partnership of Megan and your eBoard. We were asking you guys as much as you were asking us, because we were all
learning,
stumbling blindly forward with our hands in the dark, hoping, and doing our best, right? And I mean, no one had a rule book. And so the partnership that you all brought, with all the town halls and just keeping information flowing and mid quarter corrections and, trying to keep it from turning into just another Zoom, but knowing that we have these constraints. I mean, you all were so proactive, and let's leave no FEMBA behind, right? Let's bring everybody through this. Yours is the class that didn't get to do global immersions your last year. There were legit costs, but we got to audit a lot more electives. And, we are experimenting with some of these things I think are going to continue. We've had so many wonderful speakers because it's a whole lot easier to get a Fortune 50 CEO if he can just Zoom.
Right.
So like we're learning, it's like, I can't wait. I mean, you see all these pictures and you're just like, yes, come on, let's get the vaccines. Let's get on back to.
Yes. Yeah.
But we got through it. Right. So, okay. Well, I'm watching the time. I can talk to you all day. Any more pictures or any, we're kind of coming to, like the, so what, now what, like the look ahead part of the interview.
I do want to highlight one other set of images from during the program, just the learning teams. So the top left photo is a picture of my first learning group. So from Leadership Foundations and into the first quarter, we eventually did an escape room together. So that was just like a fun little thing that we did.
Nice.
And then the photo on the top right is the learning team that we got to choose for fall quarter of second year. And this was just us having fun in the library for an operations assignment of all things. But we, our team, like all of the teams were given different animal names, and our team was the lions. And so Matt, who's in the black t-shirt in the top right, ordered these lion face masks, and we were wearing them to rep our team name appropriately. And then in the bottom photo in the center, this is my GAP team, and they just were absolutely incredible. I would not have survived GAP without the support and love and hard work of my teammates. They really are wonderful individuals, and I was very lucky to have worked with them for that 6-month project. So yeah, I needed to give these groups a special shout out.
Well, and what, so your company was from Finland?
Yeah, we were lucky to be paired with a Finnish distillery named Kiro, and they produce gin and whiskey, and definitely a very sought after company. But due to the relatively direct experience of a few of my teammates, thankfully, we were ultimately the team selected to work with them. And, there are certainly some downsides to doing GAP entirely remote, primary of which is that, normally 2 of us would have been able to travel to the country itself and meet with the staff and their customers, and in addition to that, others of us would have been able to travel to conferences and meet other people that way. But one of the other major upsides to GAP being remote is that, and this I guess is just an upshot in general of the entire world going remote, along the same lines of what you're saying about being able to get a CEO of a top 50 company who can just show up if it means jumping on Zoom. It was a lot easier to secure interviews that we needed to complete our research, because it just meant giving somebody a link and asking them to spend 15, 20, 30 minutes with us, as opposed to, I would wager to say pre-COVID, that concept was less widely accepted, right? Mm-hmm. Now everybody's operating on Zoom, so it's not so foreign to field a request and then accept it. So
how many primary research interviews did you have a tally?
Yeah, so you have to complete at least 100. If you do a survey, you can cap it at 100. If you don't do a survey, you've got to do 125 interviews. So we ended up with something like 103 or 104 interviews. We also ended up doing 3 surveys as well. Yeah, but yeah, again, I just can't speak highly enough of my GAP teammates. They are just wonderful.
Well, you paid them a very high compliment when you said, how did you phrase it? I don't know, I could have gotten through this without them. Like, you're not a very hyperbolic person. You're a very level person. So that's a very generous thing for you to acknowledge about them. Like, what does that mean? Like, how is GAP that hard, or was your life really busy, or like, I mean, that's a big acknowledgement.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's everything. It's like, yeah, GAP is difficult. It's a thesis project at a highly ranked academic institution, so there's a lot of work that goes into it. So there's that. But also, we were doing this in the middle of a pandemic, and it was really trying and stressful. And I think many people went through varying levels of stress and anxiety and emotional distress, and just having them as a support, as a consistent support throughout was really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, when I do these with people who've been out of school for 3 or 5 or 7 years, still, their fall quarter, your first study group and your GAP or your BCO study group, those tend to be that, the crucible where some of those deep long-term takeaway relationships are born academically. In addition, we've been talking about networking and go to happy hour, subliminal message, go to happy hour. But there's also a really powerful curriculum that you're part of, and it has these peaks, and the launch of fall quarter is such a bracing event. And like you said, the winter quarter with the heavy quant focus, and so you get through year 1, and then you come back for strategy and operations in the fall, and then you turn the corner, and now it's time for your thesis. Yeah. All of that.
And so another piece of advice I would give relating to GAP, if your schedule allows for it, I highly recommend taking summer school, either your first or your second year. If you can avoid taking a second class during fall quarter of your third year while you are completing GAP, you will, I'd say, only benefit from that. And the only way to do that and still finish within 3 years is to accelerate in some way. And so for me, that was by taking summer school. And again, I said that just because the workload is quite heavy. So you just need to be aware of that going into this program.
And we are evolving to highly recommended, take advantage of that first summer after year 1. So that, that's going to, we think, become the new norm, but we'll see. This is, it's a new, this entering year, this year will be the first people who are, really offered a full year 1 slate of elective options. So we'll, hopefully everybody's going to take advantage of it. So it'll make that available. Okay. So, we're kind of coming here towards the end. The final third, it's not even going to be the third, we've covered so much great ground, but, so you're a month, 4 weeks away from graduation. What's next for you? How do you talk to your boss and the CFO now? How do you notice your MBA getting into your general demeanor, how you are a leader at LACMA? Like, what's next as you look forward, standing almost at graduation?
So, I mean, the truth is that there isn't a very specific what's next for me right now, other than just sort of continuing down this long, slow path, hopefully towards a higher position. But, one of the things that I'm very cognizant of is that the sort of conversations I think I would normally have with my boss upon completing a degree like an MBA are not something that I would have now because of the impact of the pandemic, right? We are a nonprofit organization that took a very serious hit to our all earned revenue streams for the year plus that we were closed. And so I think it would be quite foolish and selfish of me to say, okay, now I have this degree. Are you going to give me a promotion?
Mhm.
And, I think typically that is a mentality that some people can and appropriately should have. That's not to say that if I felt like I was on strong enough footing or the institution was in a different place that I wouldn't have that conversation. But I I'm fully aware of the realities of where we are and what we are able to do. Um, and my hope is that just in the same way that I've committed my career to this point to the institution, that they will continue to reinforce their commitment to my development as an employee and a staff member at the museum.
Mhm.
So, I will also say though that I, I loved being able to incorporate some of what I've learned during the program almost immediately at the museum, whether that's you know different ways of accomplishing certain tasks or different mindsets to approach problems with, or I took a real estate class last quarter and literally 2 weeks later was involved with an analysis that required looking at real estate, and was able to incorporate what I'd learned from Professor Habibi's class right away. So it's there are definitely benefits that come through being in the program while you're working. So I definitely appreciate that. I feel like I'm veering away a little bit from the question, but the what's next ultimately is, I guess I sort of mentioned this, is just continuing down this path. Um, I hope to stay at LACMA. Um, I hope to stay within arts administration. I hope to stay within nonprofit. Um, you never know what will happen, but that's the reason why I started the degree, and for now, at least, that's what I foresee for the short
Mhm.
term future. So,
Well, exactly. The impact of COVID has been so different. If you work at Amazon, they've never been busier. If you work in on-site physical delivery of entertainment or education, it's been, or health. I mean, yeah, like it's such a disparate impact. So if our entire revenue model is based on physical participation, and physical participation is not available, like there's no, the best risk managers in the world weren't set up for
right.
COVID, right?
Well, and
Nobody was set up for that. So
yeah, if I could plug quickly for LACMA, though, one of the other reasons why I've appreciated working there for so long is that, as big of an impact as the pandemic was, we were able to get through without any layoffs or furloughs, which for a nonprofit arts organization is, I would say, incredibly rare in this country. And it's in some ways sort of fed my this, or reinforced my commitment to the organization, that we're just managed so well that we were able to actually make it through this. And there's certainly many things that helped, like the PPP loan was hugely helpful,
mm,
as was the employee retention credit that came through towards the end of 2020. We had a number of donors who stepped up and gave some additional donations that helped us make it through. But thankfully, we are set up in a way that we're not entirely reliant on just the ticket sales and admissions and all of that, the shop, etc. It did have a big impact, but we were able to still keep our staff, which is huge
mhm.
and hugely important. And yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And everything in California, in my experience, one does need to take the long view, because this is, there's only 7 Mediterranean climates on the planet, and this is one of them. It's the Disney problem. Everybody wants to work at Disney. So there's always a line of really talented people behind you who will do the job for 3/4 of the price, right? It's the price you pay to live in a big city. So you do, at some point, you have to hustle twice as hard to be ready when the opportunity does arrive. But you're comporting yourself in a noticeable, steady Eddie way. You're adding to your network, you're adding to your professional toolkit, and you're working for people who love the organization, who've each been there 35 years, right? So it's not a high turnover place, but when the opportunity arises, hopefully at LACMA, but wherever, you've expanded who you know, what
Mhm.
you can do. So it's like what's the Bob Dylan quote? I will know my song well before I sing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And ultimately for me, this degree is about positioning myself for when that opportunity arises.
Hmm.
Yeah. Ideally at LACMA, but hopefully still within arts administration.
So, okay. Well, can we go through my lightning round?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. And one of them is a little bit of an overlap. So if future FEMBAs ask you, okay, you're an enhancer in nonprofit in arts, how do you gauge the ROI? So how would you answer that question from where you are now?
Um, in the ability to directly apply what you're learning to work, at least for me, that was really meaningful, a really meaningful set of experiences to have had. If we're speaking about it from a purely professional perspective,
However,
I would say,
however you would answer it, right? It
yeah,
was,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, from that perspective of like, you're working in nonprofit space and, there's this like long-term plan, but like, what is the ROI for you? Like, oh, I'm still here. I'm not quite yet done with the degree. So I can't speak to having realized a change in position or company or anything like that. I'm hopeful that will happen, and maybe if there's a follow-up interview a few years from now, maybe I'll have some news about that as well. But in terms of from my current vantage point, the professional ROI comes from the ability to apply what I've learned.
Mhm.
The personal ROI comes from the network and the friendships that I've built. We've mentioned this, but these are people that I will hope to be connected with for the rest of my life. They're becoming dear friends of mine. So, yeah.
Love it. I love it. Next question. What are you most proud of with your classmates, this very unique class of 2021?
Um, I feel like it's starting to become a little bit of an overused term, but persistence and resilience is that we stuck through it
Mhm.
and have made it and are now 4 weeks away from graduation, in what was for I think all of us a really difficult year.
Mhm.
So I'm really proud of us for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not overused if it's appropriate. You know? Um, what are you most, next question, what are you most looking forward to post COVID, when we get back to normal?
Going out and going dancing.
I guess especially for you, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's the professional artistic element of it, right? Like I love performing on stage for a live audience, and there's almost no rush akin to that experience.
Mm.
But also, I just like going to a club and going dancing, and I just, I'm really looking forward to hopefully sooner than later being able to do that with my friends. So, yeah.
Excellent. What, we've learned all these new things, new ways of achieving goals and results and moving forward. What work habit from COVID would you hope to continue?
Um, I I think I've uh, I wouldn't say mastered, but progressed on the ability to remain flexible. I think
Mm-hmm.
with everything you need to try to be a little bit more flexible, right? And so certain things need to be really rigid, and like if there's a deliverable that's coming up and you've got to schedule your time so that you can deliver on time, then right obviously do that. But if it's something where it's like a process, and this process is how we've done it for 20 years, and now circumstances have changed, be flexible in rethinking how you might approach that process. And that's something that we did at the museum, and it's something that I'm hopeful we can continue doing going forward.
I love it. Um, let's see. Oh, Teri Szabo, your class manager, is about to retire. If you could say anything to Teri as she enters the next chapter of her life, what might you send? What wishes would you send to Teri?
I would start by saying thank you. I really appreciated how responsive and engaged she was with our class. And I just wish her well, all the best, and that she is able to fully enjoy the next chapter. I'm a little jealous.
Yes, we all are. She was here when I got here, so she's so earned it.
Yeah.
What words would you, if I knew then what I know now, or what words of advice or encouragement would you offer the entering class following in your footsteps, our new first years, class of 24?
There were a few things that I mentioned earlier, like go to happy hour and get involved, and set a schedule, take summer school. But I think one thing, and maybe I alluded to with the discussion about the learning teams, but maybe didn't overtly state, is don't be afraid to rely on your classmates. Don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. And it's a motto that you hear a lot at Anderson, but I experienced quite a bit in practice, is this concept of sharing success. And I was lucky enough to have peers who were very generous with their time and their talent. And I think often all you need to do to tap into that is just ask. So if you feel like you need help with something, ask your peers. They'll help you.
I love it. Yeah, people can't help us if we don't ask. Yeah. All right. I'm always playing with funny words or little word combinations. So I was talking to my brother this morning. He's like, well, maybe people could do like a bear hug. So this is our Bruin. I got my little mascots up here. But if you could do a little bear hug, a little Bruin hug, well, a little something to the universe. What's a faculty? What faculty member would you like to send a bear hug to? Somebody you'd like to acknowledge, one of your faculty who stood out for you?
I'd have to say there are quite a number that are coming to mind, but if you'll indulge me with two,
sure.
I'd say Professor Hershfeld for marketing. It was incredibly engaging and personable and approachable, and thankfully I've managed to maintain a friendly relationship with him. And actually through C4C and Casino Night, I bid on and won a Zoom cocktail hour with him next week. So I'll be seeing him virtually over cocktails. So I'd give one to him, and I'd give one to Dean Unzueta, who he was my professor for negotiations my first summer, but I ended up TAing for him for a few quarters this past year. And, he then recommended me to Professors Whitson and Erickson, and I TA'd for them. And so he had a really, I'd say, an oversized impact on my experience, particularly in this last year. And I'm really grateful for the opportunities that he opened up for me. So, yeah.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. All right, Professors Hershfeld and Unzueta, we'll pay that forward. How about, anybody personally, school, like who's someone that you'd like to just appreciate, who really you feel was singular in you having such a successful graduate school? Who would you like to acknowledge?
It's such a hard question to answer. I would, again, I don't think I could single any one person out. I would just say I'd go back to my GAP team again. They were just such like hardworking, intelligent, compassionate teammates to work with, and they made, as difficult and tiring and stressful an experience as GAP can be, they made it as easy as possible. So I think it would be a group hug.
All right, a group Bruin hug and tell us. Let's say their names again for the record. I know.
Yeah, it was Annalise Siciliano, Mary Lou, Grace Chen, and Irvin Perez. They're they're great. And I loved the ability to work with them. And we were just an incredibly diverse group of students and diverse backgrounds and industries and experiences, and ultimately, again, just really, really nice people.
Oh,
yeah,
love it. Okay, just a couple more. You're almost there. This one is just because I geek out on stuff like this. What's your current favorite productivity hack? Personal, professional, doesn't matter.
I don't know that it's so much of a hack as it is just making sure you utilize your calendar. I live and die by my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. So
yeah,
use it. It's helpful.
oh, okay. Left brain, right brain. We got two answers. Those are good, right? Like, yeah, if it's not my calendar, it doesn't exist. And then what's music for you?
Oh, sorry. I didn't say music. I said use it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misheard. Okay, that's what I wanted you to say. Oh, I'm sending. Okay, so use it. All right. Sorry, I redact all of what I said about how smart you are.
Well, music helps too. I will say, I've got Spotify, and I typically have music going on in the background during the day while I'm working or while I'm studying. So music definitely contributes to it too. So yeah.
Okay. Maxine last week, what did she say? Smoothed brown noise. I still haven't even looked it up yet.
Yeah.
It's not white noise. It's smoothed brown noise, but it helps her stay really focused, especially like working from home. It bleeds out distractions and stuff. So it's not music. It's something in between.
Yeah. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, me also. I can't keep up with you guys. You're fascinating. Okay. All right. Super important question. If you could be any character in Harry Potter, male or female, good or bad, who would you be and why?
I think the first person that came to mind was Hermione.
Nice. Why? How come?
I mean, I think super important to the overall arc of the story. Incredibly helpful to Harry in his, trying to ultimately accomplish all of the many things he needs to in the various stories across the Harry Potter saga. She's a bit of a nerd, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah. She glues it together. Okay, excellent. I don't know if this is a good question or not, but I asked, so I'll keep going. Section 4. If you all were one of the 4 houses, which house would you be?
I mean, it's going to sound self-important, but I guess Gryffindor.
Yeah,
it's hard to go with, but like it's hard to. Well, so I mean, one of the things that I'll also acknowledge is that like you don't really learn a whole lot about Hufflepuff. So
yeah, they're really they're not well developed characters,
right.
Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw.
Right, and so potentially Ravenclaw, because we have a lot of really smart people in Section 4, and I think that's one of the things that Ravenclaw is associated with. But also we have a lot of fun, and so that's why I'm leaning more towards Gryffindor. Yeah.
Okay, I love it. Yeah, that one doesn't work as well as the other, I think, but whatever. I love to try new stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the end of my lightning round. And we're kind of drawing to the end of this. I want to give you the last words, anything you'd like to say, but before that, just Arun, you really do carry yourself, and I'm grateful you're going to take Anderson's education out in the world and do something with it, right? And it's so cool that you are ensconced in such an important institution, in such an important city, right? It's okay. Yeah. So it's not instant cash and prizes, but look at your network, look at your education, and it's going to pay itself off, in all the different ways one can. So I think one way you're going to pay it forward is this type of, I've learned a lot about how one might go through an MBA, listening to you. It's inspiring for me. I want to tell my children tonight at dinner, get involved in 3rd grade and 8th grade. Right. But so I just appreciate, when Darcy told me the names of who was nominated this year, I was just excited because I sort of know, but now it's the deep dive, and to see the pictures of your art and to hear the stories of your group experiences and your educational journey and your contributions through FEMBA Council and eBoard, just on behalf of all of us, thank you. Thank you for, like, you're what we ever hope to be a part of, that young people with high aspirations and high talent are gifted with a legitimate challenge that matches where they are in life, right? You had a really cool life, and we didn't want to damage that. We wanted to add to it, but it takes an incredible amount of effort on your side to make that puzzle happen. And, just pictures worth 1,000 words. I mean, plus a global pandemic, right? Just thank you for so engagingly and inspirationally putting your picture in front of us. And I hope that it's very beneficial. And I suggest that it will be for people who take the time to learn from your story. So thank you for sharing your success with us. So, yeah. So any last words that you would like to say to, anybody who's made it to this part of the interview?
I'd say to any prospective students, good luck.
Yeah.
And like I said, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. To any current students, good luck. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. And to the graduating class and to alums, congratulations and thank you. Especially to my graduating classmates, thank you for making this experience what it was. And I have enjoyed it so very much. And yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Arun. Okay, well, everyone, thanks for enjoying another episode. Arun Mathai, class of 2021, nominated by his peers, one of our summer spotlight. I hope you enjoyed his story half as much as I did, because I loved this. So thanks for listening. We'll put Arun's LinkedIn in the notes below. So look him up whenever the pandemic's over and you're over at LACMA. Knock on the door where all the big decisions are getting made, because that's where he is back there, keeping the ship afloat and steering forward. So Arun, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Dylan. This was a pleasure.